Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Michael, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables and sponsored by Analyst Depot. I am one of your hosts, Ashley. This is my co-host, Michael Duncan. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm good.
I think you're having a better day than I am.
Well, yeah, I didn't get in a car accident today, so by default.
Yeah, not been a good day. Really not been a good day. But I told you earlier, I love podcasting. I had a bad day last Wednesday too. It just seems to be a common occurrence. So I love coming on here and talking football. It gets my mind off of the day. And that sounds cheesy, but I always have a good time. So what are we going to talk about today? Give us a brief overview.
Football.
Oh my God. I think I might be in the wrong show. I thought this was a baseball podcast.
I wanted there to be a really uncomfortable silence after that.
Okay, I figured.
Right,
That's
great.
why I waited. That's why I didn't
We'll
say
not
anything.
edit that out. I have no intention.
Good. That's
to edit that
totally fine. Everyone's going to be like looking at their phones like, that's weird.
Yep. All 8 of them.
Yeah, exactly. So are you going to give us a brief overview of what we're going to talk about before we jump into it? Okay.
Yeah, so, just kind of like the last couple of weeks, we're going to go over, obviously, what happened in this past week of football with the playoffs. We're going to talk about, we're going to focus a little bit more on the teams that got eliminated and kind of what their future entails, what to expect from them, big changes, sweeping changes, or status quo. And we've also had a pretty busy week of NFL news. I think I'll kind of just get right into it. I am going to go out of order on our list, but we had Brady retire, and then he wasn't retired, and then he retired again. So that was whiplash, and that was exciting. Yeah. But apparently, as of right now, he is officially retired from the game of football after 22 years in the NFL.
Yeah, Adam Schefter did that thing where he doesn't confirm, or Adam Schefter's having a rough year. I may have had a rough day, but Adam Schefter's having a rough year with his inside sources and
all things considered.
News.
A rough year for Adam Schefter.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Yeah, still like a millionaire, but it's fine. Yeah, he reported it, and then Brady's dad came out and was like, he's still undecided. I'm pretty sure the Bucs said we still don't have an official word from Brady. And then he decided to retire by posting like an Instagram slide of a big long thing. He didn't mention the Patriots at all in that, but there's talk that he will be retiring as a Patriot, that he's going to sign a one-day contract. Yeah, I don't know if that's official. I couldn't figure out if that was official. Is that official?
I mean, I think it's about as official as it's going to get until it happens.
Yeah, so there's talk that he's going to come back to Gillette. There's going to be like a ceremony, and he's going to sign like a one-day contract and retire as a Patriot, which makes sense. But everyone was a little bit butthurt about.
I mean, I would be.
Patriots. Yeah, if I was a Patriots fan.
I mean, straight up, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, my favorite post from the weekend was entirely, Nick Foles.
Yes,
the picture of him and Tom Brady shaking hands, which is just like, dude, you knew exactly what you were doing when you did that. You knew what you were doing.
Yeah, because there was all that talk that they wouldn't shake hands after the Super Bowl, right?
And they didn't. It's not that they wouldn't; it's they didn't.
Yep.
Tom Brady refuses to shake Nick Foles' hand, and it's hysterical. And Eagles fans won't let it go.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was a Patriots fan, I would be butthurt. Like, Brian Dawkins. I think he's probably the most recent comparison that I could give in terms of Eagles. Like, if he ended his career with the Broncos. Obviously, he had a couple seasons at the end of his career as a Bronco. If he retired and didn't mention Philadelphia, I would be heartbroken. Oh, yeah. And we're not talking about the greatest player of all time here. We're talking about one of the greatest Eagles of all time, but not Tom Brady. So yeah, I mean, it's the same as if Peyton Manning didn't mention the Colts, but I don't know. I'd be butthurt. I don't blame them for being butthurt. I think it's hysterical. Because everybody hates the Patriots, apparently, including their best player of all time. So
I saw a bunch of that on Twitter.
I'm not a Patriot fan, but
yep, yeah. So my question is if he says screw it and he decides to officially retire as a Buck, does he go into the Hall of Fame as a Buck because that's where he retired from?
The NFL does not do anything similar to baseball where you go in with a certain team. So
okay. Okay. For some reason, I saw a lot of conversation about that. Like, he's going to go into the Hall of Fame under Buccaneers, and
it's a popular conversation, but it's more made up than anything. Like, when he goes to the Hall of Fame, they will most likely sell stuff as both Broncos and Patriots stuff, because they did that for Peyton.
Bucks.
With yep, and there we go. Yeah, Bucks and Patriots. They did it for Peyton.
Yeah.
They sold his Broncos jerseys and his Colts jerseys. They've done it for most players that had significant careers with two teams. And because Brady won a Super Bowl with the Bucks, like, that makes it a bigger deal. But like, the conversation, like, it reminds me of Terrell Owens, the year that he went in. Like, who is he going into the Hall of Fame with? Like, nobody, because the NFL doesn't do that. They sold, I think, mainly his Eagles, his Niners, and his Dallas stuff. Like, I think those are the teams that he focused around. But yeah, it's a made up, it's a fan thing more than anything. Unlike baseball, where you have to actually go in with like a certain cap or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured it was something like that. So I just wanted to check, because I've never been to the Hall of Fame, so I would love to go though. But
I suggest going after your favorite team wins the Super Bowl. It makes it a billion times better.
Okay, so never again, probably.
Probably.
I mean, well, with that, maybe.
I mean,
maybe
with Brady
sometime.
retired, that was kind of that was your way in, like beating Tom Brady. So
yeah.
I mean, me too.
But maybe our next way in is the Giants have hired their head coach in Brian Daboll, former offensive coordinator for the Bills, and that comes after we hired the assistant GM for the Bills as our new GM. And yeah, so the Giants have their new head coach. They're very confident that they got their guy. So who knows? With all of the things that he did with Josh Allen, I'm not expecting him to create Josh Allen out of Daniel Jones, but I think it just makes me excited for the offense. He's a very flexible guy. He's very good at, creating an offense that works towards the players' skills. And Daboll, from what I'm hearing, is going to be calling the plays. So it's pretty interesting.
So I don't know if you saw an update that I didn't. I know the last thing I read about him calling plays was that he was unsure whether or not he would have.
So yeah, I might have. I don't know if it was before or after that. I had read a whole bunch about him planning to. Maybe it wasn't official that he's going to be calling plays, but
I mean,
I don't see him kind of resigning that duty.
Yeah, I won't be shocked either way. I mean, I think it goes back and forth between head coaches and offensive coordinators more than a lot of people are aware of.
100%.
I think they get very hung up on the idea of a singular person doing it, when in reality it's not that.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, great hire. He was a guy that I thought should have gotten a head coaching job last year, and I think he wouldn't have taken it if he wasn't extremely comfortable in the GM that they hired. Because as I've said more than once about the Giants, bad franchise is going to bad franchise.
Yep.
Bad team's going to bad team. But if you trust the dude that's offering you the job, I think it probably gives Daboll confidence that he's going to have, the time, the ability to shape the team how he wants to, So.
Yeah, I agree. Some other hires, the Raiders hired Josh McDaniels from the Patriots. They also who did they hire as their GM? I forgot to write that one down.
I believe it was like the de facto. It's not the official GM from the Patriots, but it's like the de facto guy.
That's what it is.
I think is officially the GM, but I also forget his name, so I should figure that out.
It's fine. But yes, they did hire Josh McDaniels as their head coach. That comes after they didn't hire their interim head coach, Rich, and that was after Gruden was fired. So Josh McDaniels has some weird shoes to fill. I'm not even going to say big shoes to fill, but that organization has a lot of future to plan and a lot of stuff to figure out. And they had said Josh McDaniels was super excited to work with Derek Carr. So I don't know if that gives us a hint if they are planning on keeping him for a while or whatnot, but I saw that somewhere.
I mean, I don't think it's much of a hint, because what else is he going to say?
Yeah.
I mean, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't there.
Yeah. I mean, you could just be broad.
Yeah, but then you get criticized, and Derek Carr feels ostracized, and the easiest thing to do is just say, I'm excited to work with this guy. And Dave Ziegler, who is the GM, if he decides to trade him, he decides to trade him. Nick Sirianni was very excited to work with Carson Wentz. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Way of looking at it. Who is next on our hired list? The Broncos. This was weird. I didn't see him going there, but the Broncos hired Nate Hackett as their head coach.
And he was the
That one kind
offensive
of came
coordinator for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah. That one kind of came out. There was a lot of rumors that he was going. Oh my God, we talked about it last week.
Jaguars?
Yes, there we go. Jaguars. There was there's still rumors floating around the Jaguars, obviously not around Nate Hackett anymore, but that was a big one because he had spent time in Jacksonville. So we had talked about him going to the Jags last week, but he ended up going to the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, it's with guys like that, it's always I feel like it's tough to get a real good idea of really what they are as an offensive mind or an offensive coordinator, because you're looking at that team and with a guy like Brian Daboll, you've got a defensive minded head coach. He's the guy calling the plays. He has a young, inexperienced quarterback who he raises up. Nathaniel Hackett had Aaron Rodgers, and he was the offensive coordinator under a very experienced and very exciting hire as their head coach, who is an offensive guy and from the Kyle Shanahan tree. So it's hard to tell, how much of that offense was Nathaniel Hackett, how much of it was Aaron Rodgers, and how much was the head coach. So it's intriguing. I mean, I think it's always good to get a guy from a good system like that and with success. I mean, but it's not as clear, I think, as to what they bring to the table. But obviously, I'm not the one in interviews with them and, all that junk. So, but finally, we have the final hire, I guess. We're still waiting on, I think, the Saints, the Vikings, though we do have some news there. And the Jags, of course, because, God, they suck at everything. But the Bears hired Matt Eberflus, who was previously the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. That one came a little bit out of left field for me. He's been saying all the right things. I don't have a lot. The defense has a lot of talent on it. They have a history of good, solid defenses, both, recently and further back. So it'll be interesting. I think who he hires as his offensive coordinator, I have not seen if he has yet, but I think that's going to be the key hire because you've got a lot of young guys on that offense and specifically Justin Fields and how you're going to maximize him moving forward and turn him into a franchise quarterback. So,
yeah, that one came out of left field for me as well. I when we had talked about him as a candidate as a head coaching jobs, I believe he had a couple of interviews throughout the league. But I don't know, like it always felt like good for him, but I don't think he's going to get a job just yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it was, you've been good, but I don't think it might have been good enough to prove yourself for a head coaching job, but they sure seem to think so. And they were like very I mean, they wouldn't say otherwise, but they were confident in him. And, there were a lot of other people on the board still for head coaching vacancy, to fill that seat. And they were very confident with going with him instead. So I'm excited to see how it works out because I feel like his is kind of like a little bit of untapped potential that we really don't know what to expect. And I'm kind of excited to see how he is as a head coach.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously he had full control over the defense with Frank Reich being, primarily an offensive guy in Indianapolis as the head coach. And then, so the last bit of coaching news before we kind of move on to something bigger is just the Vikings. News has been coming out. Obviously, we record on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. In the last hour, this news report has changed seemingly 5 times. But they interviewed Jim Harbaugh tonight from Michigan, the Michigan head coach, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. He basically told them no thanks. He called Michigan, said, "I'm good. We're staying here." And then over the next hour, there were reports that it was down to Patrick Graham, the DC of the Giants, Raheem Morris, and Kevin O'Connell, the DC and OC of the Rams, respectively. And right before we pressed going live, it was reported that Kevin O'Connell is the guy, but they can't hire him. They can't make anything official until after the Super Bowl because obviously he'll be with the Rams. So not official, but I guess as close as it can be, according to Adam Schefter. So
yeah. Yeah, the way that all happened, like, we were genuinely like, it was you said, "It's showtime," and then we were like, "Oh, wait a second." We have the news alerts set up on our phone and saw that. I think Kevin O'Connell is a great hire for them if that ends up being true. I mean, there's still a lot of time from now until signing the deal, after the Super Bowl, but I think Kevin O'Connell would be a great guy for them. I'm intrigued to see what happens with Patrick Graham, because I'm not sure in a new system if he's gonna stay on as defensive coordinator
They
or if
want him to.
they do. So that's the thing is, like, do after all these head coaching candidates, I could see him staying, but, does he get an interview in the head coaching vacancies that are still open or anything like that?
I believe
Um
he's up for the job with the Saints and the
Saints
Jaguars
and
at the
Jags.
very
Okay,
least.
I did.
I don't know for sure about
I
Miami.
knew about the Saints, I believe. I don't think I knew about the Jaguars for him, but I'm intrigued to see what happens with him. But if I had to choose one of those three for that job, it would probably be Kevin O'Connell. Yeah.
And you wanted to tell us
Yes.
about the the big thing that kind of broke. I
Yes.
think it was this morning, actually.
Yes.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah. So it pretty crazy news. It was yesterday, and news came out that Brian Flores has filed a lawsuit. Brian Flores is the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and there's a lot to unpack in the lawsuit, but the general gist of it is that there is discrimination in the league's hiring process. That has been the big headline. So he is suing three specific teams. He's suing the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos, and the Miami Dolphins. Um, so he claims that the Giants knew that they were hiring Dabble before they even interviewed Brian Flores. And this comes from a text from Bill Belichick. Let me pull up the actual text message. So
And
Bill,
this is what you'd call a smoking gun.
yeah, he meant to text
Dabble.
Brian Dabble, there we go, and it accidentally texted Brian Flores and said, "Whoa, they think we're gonna hire you." And he was like, "Oh, the interview." Let me read the actual text. So Bill says, "Sounds like you have landed. Congrats." He said, Did you hear something I didn't?" Bill says, "Giants?" He said, "I interview on Thursday. I think I have a shot at it." Bill says, "Got it. I hear from Buffalo and New York Giants that you're their guy. Hopefully it works out if you want it to." And then Brian said, "That's definitely what I want. I hope you're right, coach. Thank you." And then he said, "Coach, are you talking to Brian Flores or Brian Dabble? Just making sure." Bill Belichick said, "Sorry, I effed this up. I double checked and misread the text. I think they're naming Dabble. I'm sorry about that, BB," for Bill Belichick. And Brian Flores' response was, "Thanks, Bill." So he claims that I believe it was 3 days. This was 3 days before his interview with the New York Giants that they already knew that they were hiring Dabble. So he's saying that they only continued to interview Flores after that because of the Rooney Rule. And that is a rule in place that any team with a head coach vacancy has to interview 2 external minority candidates.
Is it 2 now?
It is 2. It got bumped up a few years ago.
Wow, I missed that.
So it is 2. I think because they wanted to kind of create almost, I don't want to say network, but if you have 2 external, you can't, having that word external is very crucial. So I think pulling 2 from other organizations has, then it also makes coaches a little bit lower down the ladder, get these head coach interviews. But he's claiming that, they only continued to interview him for the Rooney Rule and kind of led him on. And he's claiming that the Broncos did something similar, but that they kind of didn't give him a fair shot at an interview, that he thinks they were only interviewing him for the Rooney Rule as well. And they didn't give him a fair shot at the interview because the interviewers showed up an hour late looking hungover, disheveled. He said they clearly were out drinking the night before. So obviously those 2 organizations have refuted the claims, said they will, stand by their decisions and their claims and everything. But yeah, that Broncos hire wasn't this turnaround. I believe it was.
That was when they hired
Vic Fangio, right? I was just triple checking that. Yep. And then
at
his
time it was only 1. Kyle did let us know in the comments. The bump to 2 was last offseason.
Perfect. There we go. And then his claims against the Dolphins is that there's two big ones, is that the Dolphins offered to pay him $100,000 for every loss so that they would effectively tank. That was the year that Joe Burrow was taken number 1 overall, so I'm assuming they were
His
trying
first
to
year as a head coach.
Yes. And I'm assuming that was them trying to go for Burrow, like if their intention was to get up to number 1.
They were
But the
trying to
Dolphins
tank. They were trying to
Exactly.
trust the process.
Yes. And they continued winning. So, they ended up not going number 1 overall. And he claims that the Dolphins had a meeting with a quote unquote prominent quarterback in 2020 who is still under contract on a yacht against league rules. Ian Rappaport says that this quarterback was Tom Brady. There was talk that maybe it was Deshaun Watson, but then it came out that it was 2020 and that it was Tom Brady. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I have a list here what Flores is seeking from this lawsuit. He says increased influence of Black individuals in hiring, increased objectivity of hiring / terminating GMs, head coaches, and coordinators, an increased number of Black coordinators, incentivized hiring / retention of Black GMs, head coaches, and coordinators, and transparency of pay for GMs, head coaches, and coordinators. And he said, I think one of my favorite quotes of this whole thing is that he said, I have goals and dreams. I still want to be a head coach, but this is much more important than my goals and dreams because, there's a lot of talk that Brian Flores screwed himself over and he may not get hired as a head coach or a coach in this league ever again.
I mean,
and he
seen
said,
it happen.
Yeah. And
It's
he's
not like
saying,
happened.
Yeah, exactly. And he's saying, my hopes and dreams are not nearly as big as the issues that are here, and I had to finally say something. And other people started stepping up. Hugh, is it Jackson? I always get him confused with Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackson
One of them is
came
Wolverine.
forward. Yeah, I know. Well, I always make sure, but yeah, so he came forward and said that the same thing happened to him, that he was only being interviewed for the Rooney Rule. You and I had Steve Weish on this podcast, and he says many, many times that he gets texts from coaches that are interviewing for head coach vacancies. And he says, it's the same thing that these guys are like, I'm getting an interview. And then a couple of days later, it's, they didn't hire me. They're just using me for the Rooney Rule. And that it's just deflated and it's deflating. And it makes, they're telling these Black coaches, well, you should still go for the interview because get your name out there, but it's just being used to fill quotas and other things. So yeah, tell me your thoughts. I've been talking for a little bit. I'll let you give some thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been aware of the Rooney Rule for a while, for sure. But one real quick thing was that, and I hadn't heard that Hugh was, I guess, interviewed for the Rooney Rule. What I had heard that he said was that he was paid money for losing with the Browns to tank at one point.
Okay. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I wrote it down wrong.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It could be both. Yeah. I don't know, but I know I read that. But what I didn't realize was that the Rooney Rule was actually bumped up last year. Yeah. I guess I totally missed that. But that's super interesting, mainly because it completely changes the way that I look at the Giants situation with Brian Flores. Because initially when I saw the report, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me because they had interviewed Leslie Frazier prior to Brian Flores. And I was like, okay, well, they got their one out of the way. So Brian Flores's, thought process is a little off there. Didn't realize that it was 2.
And my confusion was that I saw 3 and I said, oh, because they interviewed Patrick Graham for it, but I forgot that both candidates need to be external. Yes. Yeah. It can't be like 1 external, 1 internal, 2 external. So that's why I was confused about that as well.
Yeah. And obviously, regardless of the confusion with that particular scenario, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's completely, it is a problem. It is an issue.
100%.
It has been for a long time. And, I think this was instituted back in 03-ish or something. And it's been an issue since then. It's gotten better in the way that, yes, more people have interviewed, but currently there is 1 Black head coach in the NFL of 32 teams. I believe that's either the exact same or like maybe less than it was in 2003.
In a league that's comprised of like 70% players of color.
Yeah. And I think the main issue that, you know, a lot of people have pointed out is that it starts with ownership. I mean, I don't know this for sure because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm about 99% sure that there's not a single majority black owner of an NFL team in the NFL. And like, that's an issue. I truly, you know, if I feel like if I had an answer, you know, I'd be working for the NFL, but I don't have an answer. There's not a good solution to this, other than the people in power making decisions differently and changing the way that they view things. That's really what it comes down to. It's unfortunate because, you know, there is no easy solution, but it takes people like Brian Flores speaking out and putting his career at risk to make change happen. I mean, like year after year, that's what we see. I don't know if you saw the Colin Kaepernick documentary on Netflix,
Yes.
But it was really good. And you know, the quarterback position is obviously, it's very different from head coaching, and it's a different conversation entirely. But you know, it brought forward a very uncomfortable conversation of the way that, you know, in the NFL, like you said, like over 70% of the players are black. The quarterback position does not properly, you know,
Reflects
fit that
that
percentage. It doesn't line up the same way, and that's largely due to, for a long time, black quarterbacks were looked at differently. And that's something that Colin Kaepernick talks a lot about in that documentary, and talks about the idea behind, you know, a guy being able to read a defense, being smart enough to play at the NFL level, as opposed to just having, you know, unique
muscles
traits.
Yeah, and like muscles, like
so
crazy.
It's
one. Go ahead. You finish.
It's just, I don't know. It's unfortunate. I wish I could say I had something to say that hasn't already been said, but I hope that the NFL takes this seriously. I think that the changes they made last offseason, along with the bump, I think were a step in the right direction. Whereas I believe I know at least for GMs, and I believe it's for head coaches as well, if a team loses a part of their organization and that person gets hired as a head coach or a GM for another organization, the organization that lost the minority coach or front office member gets gets a prize in picks. I think they get like 2 third-round compensatory picks. So that, you know, encourages teams to promote from within to the higher levels of like offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. So that way minorities can be there, get noticed, and get hired elsewhere. I think that was a good step. But the fact of the matter is it lands in management, it lands in ownership, and it lands in a certain way of thinking that hasn't completely been expelled from our society, let alone the NFL.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, you know, it's not a fully thought out plan, but I think one of the things that I sent out in a tweet the other day when that first came out was that I think a huge thing here is that there needs to be programs in place to get more Black and minority coaches lower down the ladder, right? Start them out, get more in college that will then be bumped up to the NFL, get more there's obviously they don't have influence there, but get more coaches in lower positions, right? Even just strength and conditioning and these lower down the ladder jobs. I don't know how better to say that, but then it will get these guys in systems where they can learn and grow, continue and promote more leadership summits and, you know, training seminars for all coaches, but for specifically minority coaches. And then you will the big argument here is that people are always like, well, they got their guy and he was the best candidate. All right, so then why is there no best candidate who's a black head coach, a black coach? Maybe that's the way people see, and maybe you just put them lower down the ladder and they get that experience and they grow and they move up that ladder, and then the get your guy will be someone of color. I just think it's so systemic at this point, especially in the NFL. Systemic racism is real in the entire society, but in the NFL, it's huge. And it's this dirty, dark underworld of the NFL that not a lot of people talk about. And there just needs to be more thought put into these things than just paint end racism in the end zones and implementing a rule that NFL teams are not so shy about letting the candidates kind of feel that they're just being there to meet a standard, like a quota. So I don't have a clear plan, but I really hope the NFL comes up with one, because it's getting ridiculous at this point that Mike Tomlin is the only black head coach left in the NFL.
And I think something that you touched on is important, and that it's, it is unfortunate that like no one is saying that Brian Dabble doesn't deserve the job.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it last week. Like, he was one of my favorite guys last year. He was one of my favorite guys this year.
Yeah.
But it is for the most part a very systemic thing that often can't be proven. There isn't often a smoking gun like this where they can say that there is someone that had inside knowledge that the Giants had already made their decision prior to interviewing a black candidate that would therefore make them able to hire Brian Dabble, which automatically means that, okay, we don't care what we hear from Brian Flores. We are not hiring him. And it's that mentality that needs to change. It's not the idea that white males can't be hired for jobs anymore. Because I know that's a very typical argument to say it plainly, people that are in a privileged enough position to be able to feel like somehow their privilege is being taken away by people wanting minorities to have more opportunities. I'm a straight white male. I'm as privileged as they come. But like, it has to be at least fair. If Brian Dabble is going to get hired, let him be hired. Fine. No one is arguing. I mean, he is as qualified as they come. He's equally as qualified as Brian Flores or Eric Bieniemy. And the fact of the matter is, if they had just not made their decision until after Brian Flores was interviewed, then this, it wouldn't be the same issue. But the fact that they had already made the decision is what proves that their thought process in interviewing Brian Flores was strictly that to fulfill a requirement set by the NFL. And therein lies the issue. And it's unfortunate because most of the time there isn't a smoking gun of any sort, let alone one signed by, Bill Belichick as BB.
Yeah.
So,
he took down 2 enemies with this.
Shocker.
I know. But something you said, and it's like, there just has to be a better solution. And I think, you can't be like, you have to have this certain amount of, at least I don't think that's the best plan, is to be like, you have to have one of the top 3 coaches, head coach, offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator be a minority. I don't think that that's the best plan there, because that doesn't solve, much. You aren't creating a system where these coaches will flourish and move on to higher, better positions if you're just throwing them in a situation, right? But it has to be something that it's fair. And that's what I was going to say, is that equity, right? It's right now you might say all things are, equal, but they're not equitable. And that's the huge issue here, is that equity is a huge part. And I'm curious to see if this affects any head coach hires going forward. Like, I know Byron Leftwich is a huge favorite for the Jags job, but I mean, even if you put a lens on that, it's like Byron Leftwich is going to be hired, but he's a favorite right now. And then it's like, wait, let's interview Nate Hackett. Okay, just kidding. Byron Leftwich is our guy. Let's interview one more person. So you have to then look at it at a lens from like, are they doing the same thing? Like, is there a reason they're not hiring Leftwich? Maybe it could just be that they don't think he's a good fit there, but now you have to sit there and analyze it. And that's what we should be doing in the first place. We should be sitting here analyzing why the hell why we only have one black head coach.
And
yeah, but
we could go on for this for
we could do an entire podcast about this. I could get heated and do this for hours, but we can move on and talk some games. We had two more crazy games this past week, 2 close games. Which division you want to start in?
Let's start in the AFC. Let's go in the order that we watched the games.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Bengals beat the Chiefs in
They
overtime,
did.
and Patrick Mahomes got the ball first. And
Yeah.
no, this does not change that the NFL's overtime rules
Thank
are
you.
absolute and
Everyone's like,
miserable
look,
garbage. It
look, the
doesn't
NFL,
solve
you are not
anything.
complaining now. Yeah, it
Like,
drove
I
me
don't
crazy.
just because there's a trampoline out my window because two guys were walking by and I happened to land on it as I tripped and fell out my front window does not mean I should keep tripping and falling out my front
Yeah.
window. I got very lucky, but it does not excuse a poor process of tripping and falling out my front window.
That was a interesting analogy. Has that
I'm
happened to
great
you
at
before?
analogies.
Yeah.
They're always just top notch. But yeah, the Bengals, Joe Burrow, Joe Cool, he's going to the Super Bowl.
Joe
Less than
Shiesty.
2 years removed, or roughly 2 years removed, I believe, from being the Heisman winner and a national champion.
Yeah. The score of that game was 27-24. Bengals, it kind of seemed like the Chiefs were like trying to give it away in overtime. But one thing I wanted to point out before we talk a little bit is that no quarterback has won the Heisman national title and the Super Bowl. Two people have won the Heisman and a Super Bowl, and both of them were named Joe Montana and Joe Namath. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. He's going to join the Joe Club.
He's going to join the Joe Club. But he could be the first. I mean, look at my favorite thing about it is that it's like the Bengals, they're broken. Like, no, the bank, like completely broken. And now they're in the Super Bowl. And I am so happy for them. And I just hope they win so I could like see the fans' reactions. That's all. I loved that after the Bengals one was seeing the reactions of like all the fathers and sons that like, you know, I saw one with like an old man and like a middle-aged man. And like, they never thought they would have the Bengals go to the Super Bowl or even have a chance at winning. And
trust me, I can relate.
Yeah.
I truly understand how they're feeling.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the game. Why don't we break down the game first, and then we could talk a little bit about the future for the Chiefs.
Well, obviously, you know, yay, Bengals. Joe Burrow's great. Zach Taylor sucks. I don't think he's very good at his job.
Yeah.
He actively was trying to not make them go to the Super Bowl. It was horrid.
Weird. I almost sent out a tweet that was like, did Zach Taylor like forget how to coach?
No, I think he bet on the Chiefs.
It literally looks like it.
Like I don't get it. It was just like I understand the idea of running the ball, but if something's not working, don't keep doing it. Like they ran the ball on every first down, and it never worked. Because
and they're usually
the
not doing
defense, and that's great.
They
something
usually are
normally
aggressive.
Works. Is something normal? Like they actually had a very high percentage of running the ball this year. They ran the ball a lot, mainly because Joe Burrow's in his second year and he was healing from an ACL tear. But if it's not working, stop doing it because all you're doing is just setting up 2nd and 9 every single time. You're just making your offense's life way harder than it has to be on every single drive. And I don't understand it. He got bailed out by the fact that they won the game because Joe Burrow is really good and the defense, I think, played really, really well. And Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the ball, speaking of the Cincinnati defense, like they adjusted super well. Patrick Mahomes historically had one of the best halves of his entire career in the first half and statistically had maybe, if not the worst, one of the worst halves of his entire career in the second half. That was about as Jekyll and Hyde as you could possibly get in the NFL from a perennial MVP candidate. And it was crazy to watch.
Yeah.
Also, the worst play that I think I've ever seen was that Patrick Mahomes play to end the first half. That was horrible. I don't know what he was thinking.
There were several times that I sat there and was like, what are you thinking? Like, it looked like mid-season Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. For reference, there was, I think, 5 seconds left. They had just had an incomplete pass in the end zone. Andy Reid went to go send the field goal unit in to end the half to go up. I think it would have been like 24-10 as opposed to 21-10, I believe. And Patrick Mahomes said, no, give me one more shot. He, told the kicker to go back and sit down. Andy Reid said, fine, because when Patrick Mahomes says that, you do it. That's fine. He's earned that. But first of all, play call weird. I don't know why you're wasting 2 seconds doing a fake handoff, because by the time Patrick Mahomes is looking to pass, there's 3 seconds left on the clock.
They're covered.
Very odd. And then as soon as your first and maybe second read aren't there, either one, you're not firing it in the end zone. Or sorry, either one, you're firing it into the end zone immediately to one of those guys. But if that's not there, you spike it and you take the field goal with like a second left. Instead, with 3 seconds left, after he checks both of his first and second read, he does a dump off to Tyreek Hill, basically a lateral. Tyreek Hill gets the ball with like 2 seconds left. You're not getting another playoff because one, you're out of time. I think you're out of timeouts.
Yes.
And why do that? Like, yeah, I guess best case scenario, Tyreek Hill, you know, does what he can do and he jukes people out and he makes his way into the end zone. But like, he didn't.
They got the ball to start the second half too.
There was no reason. I am fully okay with going for it on that. Like, you have 5 seconds. That is enough time for a one read or spike it. That is fine. But Patrick Mahomes did something very inexcusable in what he did, and he cost them 3 points. And oh, look, they lost by 3 points in overtime. Now, I'm not saying that, the game wouldn't have turned out the same way or whatever, but like, that was an important play.
Yes.
That was a very important play when it came to Cincinnati really controlling the second half of the game, because the Chiefs got the ball back in the second half to start it, and they didn't score. The defense kept them out of the end zone and kept them from getting any points. That gave the Bengals room to come back. Yeah.
And it kind of like, it just made the whole offense, like the Chiefs offense, look a little bit discombobulated after that. And I don't know if that was just like everyone was thinking like, what the hell were you doing? But it's just like when you're in a conference championship, you just have to take the points at that point, especially when you get the ball back and you're not down. Just take the points. Give yourself a little bit of a bumper around your lead right now. And I think that was a huge mistake. And I think, like I said, I think Patrick Mahomes looked more like mid-season Patrick Mahomes in this game.
In the second half.
Yeah, in the second half.
He was perfect in the first half.
Yes. And that's what I meant. In the second half. Once they came out after halftime, it looked like he was mid-season Patrick Mahomes. But rookie kicker, Evan McPherson, goes down to win the game. Evan, ice in his veins, McPherson. I wonder if he called the we're going to the Super Bowl this time, because he said last time he was like, looks like we're going to the AFC Championship, and then kicked before he even kicked. But yeah, and then lots of comments about how the Bengals locker room was like literally covered in clouds and clouds of cigar smoke.
Nothing too shocking there.
Yeah. I don't think there's too much more to talk about the game itself, but like we have been with all the playoffs, do you want to talk a little bit about what we see in the Chiefs' future?
Yeah, I mean, it started out as a very disappointing year, but one that I think most people kind of...
One thing, did you see that tweet from the radio station in Kansas City that was like, nobody expected us to be here, like against all odds at the beginning of the season? And everyone's like, you were literally favored to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season.
That was their 4th straight AFC championship.
Yeah, and they were like, everybody doubted us. Like, nobody doubted you. Like, maybe a little bit in midseason, but not like that.
I'm all for the underdog thing. Trust me.
But not when you're the Kansas City Chiefs.
It does not work when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback.
And Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And, sorry for interrupting. I just had to point that out. It was ridiculous.
So, I mean, looking forward, I mean, unlike a lot of these other teams, I feel like, we keep getting these teams that are being eliminated that might see big sweeping changes. And I think we'll get there with our next team. But I don't see a lot changing with the Chiefs. It doesn't look like Eric Bieniemy is going to get a head coaching job, so he'll be back. All the main players on the offense and defense, I believe, are supposed to return. Patrick Mahomes is under contract until hell freezes over. And Travis Kelce, while he's aging, hasn't really looked like it. They're going to draft. They're probably going to keep drafting pretty well because they've been, decent at that. They have some cap room to possibly sign maybe a difference maker at wide receiver like Juju or an Odell Beckham Jr. or maybe a Devontae Adams possibly in a trade or something like that. I mean, Tyreek Hill was very inconsistent this year. And I think that's something they want to look at. It's just getting him a little help, getting him a little more acclimated on the offense. Not acclimated, that's not the right word, but forcing it to him maybe a little bit more, because there were a lot of games in this season that he just kind of disappeared. He didn't do much. And, it's going to happen occasionally, especially a guy that's built like he is. He's not, a 10 catch guy in every game like a Devontae Adams, but it'll be interesting to see how they address that position. But I think, Andy Reid will be back. Patrick Mahomes will be back. Past that, I'm not really sure that anything matters. As long
Well,
as
I think a big thing is running back, right? Like, I know they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I don't know what they're going to plan to do there because it seems like they don't even trust him that much.
I mean, he was recovering from injury. Like, I do
I know,
agree with
but
you, but given Andy Reid's history and the way that he's not afraid to utilize multiple running backs
Mhm.
and the success that most running backs have there, like it's never going to be a run heavy offense while Patrick Mahomes
Yep.
is there. Andy Reid constantly forgets that he can run the ball. I think Clyde will be there. Maybe Jerick McKinnon comes back. I think that they'll probably draft someone because I think most teams should draft running backs most years because they're very replaceable and they get hurt a lot. Point in case, Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed a lot of time this year. So, again, it's very like, does it matter? Sure. But outside of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I'm not sure that much of anything, the defense is kind of its own thing. It's its own existence, whether or not that's good or bad is kind of up to who's on that side of the ball and also up to how Patrick Mahomes is playing. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to two guys, and that's Patrick and Andy. So,
yeah. And I think I'm interested to see their drafting process. I think they did lose Ryan Poles, who was, I'm going to give you his official title, was the director of player personnel. So we know he did have a hand in their drafting process. So I don't know, if they change it up a little bit, I mean, what they have been doing has had success, but I don't know if it's, that affects them at all. But yeah, I think there's not really too much to talk about here. But I think what you said was exactly how I was feeling. I think that running back position is the one thing that I think that they might take a little bit more of a magnifying glass to, and maybe try and find somebody just a little bit higher up than where they would usually go for a running back. Maybe they
you mean
go
like the 32nd pick in the first round?
maybe not that, but you know what I mean. Like,
That is
maybe
what
they
they've
reach a
used.
little bit. Maybe they reach a little bit, where they
Like
shouldn't.
the
But
32nd pick in the first round when Jonathan
yeah,
Taylor, DeAndre Swift, and J.K. Dobbins are all on the board.
yeah, like
Choose
that,
Clyde
like that.
Edwards-Helaire because apparently Patrick Mahomes makes all the drafting choices. Like any smart organization lets happen.
Yeah, exactly. You mean if you ran an NFL team, you wouldn't let them do that?
It's a very well. If I did, sure, because I'm an idiot. Like if I'm running an organization, clearly Patrick Mahomes knows more about this than I do.
I'm curious how your organization got Patrick Mahomes in the first place.
I inherited him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I actually I used the money that was set aside for like my parents' retirement, and I just kind of bought the Chiefs.
Oh, okay.
I went Jerry Jones with it. Pointed myself the GM.
Yeah. And your future kids will not have dinner or anything if you mess this up because you used all the money.
Honestly, I don't think you can lose money owning an NFL franchise if Patrick Mahomes
I don't know.
is back. Honestly.
Yeah, if Patrick Mahomes is there, yeah.
Because the NFL and football in general is just kind of going up. Like, I'm not going to make as much money as some franchises, but
yeah.
I don't even think the Jags are losing money.
Yeah. I feel like we should play this game in the off season. I'm gonna write this down. Maybe we'll have an entire episode where we build a franchise. No, I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying that we do it on here and we build our own franchises.
So Madden? You want to stream Madden is what you're saying.
I'm not streaming. I'm just saying that we would talk about it. Talk some theory.
So we stream and talk about
Madden.
God,
I don't want to stream. I'm not a streamer. I'm not a gamer.
That's very untrue. You were the mod of a PlayStation 5 Discord channel.
I was. You remembered that?
In case.
Moving on, but I don't game.
Okay. We had the Rams and the 49ers, by the way. I went 0-2 this week. Ashley went 2-0.
Yeah, I went 2-0.
I've gone 0-6.
I actually kept a list. Let's see how many you got wrong in total. Go ahead, you can keep talking.
I went 5-12. I went 5-6 the first week, and I've gone 0-6 since. It's very simple. Very easy math. I did not get any right last week, and I did not get any right this week.
So you have 8 wrong. Because you said the Eagles would beat the Bucks.
I went 5-12. 5 of 12.
The ones you got wrong, you got Patriots wrong, Eagles wrong, Titans, Packers, Bucks, Bills, Chiefs, Niners.
I wasn't adding that up in my head.
Yeah. And I've gotten 2.
I got 7 wrong.
I've gotten 2 wrong.
I got 5 right. 7 wrong.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Which one are you not counting? I went 5 and 6 the first week. The only one I got wrong was the Eagles.
You said the Patriots were going to beat the Bills.
No, I said the Bills were going to beat the Patriots. I'm a Bills fan.
You said that the Patriots.
I
did, but you said that the Patriots were your favorite underdog pick of the week.
They were my favorite underdog pick of the week. I didn't pick them.
Okay, so maybe you never actually said I'm 100% picking. Okay, so that's the one that we're disagreeing on. But yeah, I've only gotten 2 wrong.
Disagreeing about how bad I am at this is really the moral of the story. Very is the answer.
We are.
The NFC side. The Rams beat the 49ers 20-17. Sean McVay finally got that monkey off his back after going 0-6 over the last 3 years against Kyle Shanahan. I guess we can start with the Rams and then work our way into the 49ers and obviously what their future looks like, which is a little more exciting. Maybe not exciting, but at least a little different, interesting than the Chiefs. But the Rams will be playing the Super Bowl in their home stadium. That's the second
as the visiting team, though.
Yeah, as visiting team, which is funny. They
get their own locker room.
Wait, they're getting to stay in the home team locker room?
Yeah, that's at least what I heard. It was a couple of days ago, but did they get to keep their locker room?
That's stupid. And honestly, I think it's rigged now. If they win, it's got an asterisk.
Yeah.
And
I'm still gonna not 100% quote me on that, but when I read up
I'm putting in the description of this episode.
Yes.
So if it's wrong,
make the description, so you can do that.
I can do whatever I want. I can like piece together words you've said and just make you say whatever I want.
I know you can.
I have a ton of audio of you. So
good to know.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this was, I don't know, it wasn't that exciting of a game.
No, but then it somehow was, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. It was. I feel about as good about it as I did going into it, where I said I hate both of the head coaches. I think they both suck. And honestly, I walked out of it thinking, wow, Kyle Shanahan kind of handed it to Sean McVay. He wasn't aggressive. Obviously, the Rams earned it. I love Matt Stafford. Cooper Kupp is incredible. Odell Beckham Jr. is much better when he's not in a Browns uniform. Shocker. Maybe if they name themselves the Oranges, they'd be better.
Hey, I have my Browns. I got a new vintage sweatshirt. Everyone knows I collect vintage sweatshirts. I got a Browns one on today.
I don't like the Browns.
They're not my favorite, but I like the sweatshirt.
They're definitely like bottom 4 for me.
And it's pretty low for me too.
It's purely.
I just hate the logo.
Well, yeah, because it's an orange helmet. They're the Browns. And no, I don't care that they're named after Paul freaking Brown. Be more creative. Jesus. All right. I'm sorry.
We keep getting sidetracked.
The Rams. I don't know. I feel like I'm searching for things to say. I don't think there's a lot of exciting stuff to say. It's really exciting to see Matthew Stafford doing this. Yeah. I love Matthew Stafford. I've liked him really since he was drafted. Like, he's been one of my favorite non-Eagles in the league for a long time. And I love being able to root for him in these big games. It's just exciting to see him be able to do that. I love Cooper Kupp. I know you do too.
That's what I was going to say. For me, it's Cooper Kupp, man. I'm so happy for him that he gets to go do this and go to the Super Bowl. He's been my favorite hands down player outside of the Giants, maybe even over most of the Giants. I
mean, who is there really to like on the Giants?
There's no one. So Cooper Kupp is my favorite player, and I'm really, really happy for him. And I'm happy for the Rams in general.
I'm not. I don't like Sean McVay.
But yeah, that's what I said. Maybe not Sean McVay, but
if he wins a Super Bowl, and this is the sole reason why I'm rooting against the Rams, because I like a lot of the Rams. I want Matthew Stafford to get a ring. But if he wins a Super Bowl, it's like he's already way overhyped. Like, he is a good coach. He is a good offensive mind, maybe great.
Yep.
He's already so overhyped.
It's never going to end.
He wins the Super Bowl. No one's like, it's just like, induct him into the Hall of Fame. Name the league after him. Yeah. Like, what is the next step at this point? I don't even know. And I'm just angry thinking about it. Like,
I can
oh my
tell.
God. I hope he scores 3 points again. That's really what happened. Like, God, he went to the Super Bowl and the freaking
Scored 3
greatest
points.
offensive mind of all time put up 3 points. It's like, oh, it's against the Patriots. Nick Foles put up 41. I don't want to hear that crap.
The Falcons put up more than that.
Exactly. It's just bull crap. I'm angry. I don't want Sean McVay to win.
Deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth.
I'm fine. He's gonna like. I don't know what the next step is. Does he get a statue in the Hall of Fame? Does he get a statue in the league office? Does the entire league
he gets to
retire his
become
number?
commissioner.
He
gets to become the commissioner.
Do they rename the game of football after him? I don't know. Like at this rate, I don't know what the next step is. How can we praise Sean McVay more? I truly don't know.
I like the idea of McVay ball.
Yeah, that actually has a nice ring to it. I guess
It
as
does,
far as
that's
all
what I'm
names
saying.
go,
Yeah.
like it's a good name.
McVay ball.
Like it sounds a lot better than Actually, Belichick ball is not that bad either.
That's
Reed
not
ball
bad.
is pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like head coaches.
Taylor ball.
Taylor.
Sounds all right.
That sounds like a brand.
Carroll ball.
What was that one?
Pete Carroll ball.
Carroll ball. Okay, maybe none of them are that bad. I guess putting ball after something doesn't really make it that bad, but it works most of the time. McVay ball is a good one though, but
McVay ball is probably the best.
Yeah.
It would. Kyle said if McVay was commissioner, it would be an upgrade. It would, but still. No,
I don't think that's enough praise.
Yeah.
I think he deserves more than that if he
100%.
manages to win this game.
100%.
I don't know. I like Matt Stafford, so I'm very torn on this.
Yeah. I will let me pull this up real quick. Matt Stafford did have a good game. He went 31 for 45 with 337 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. And that was something you and I had spoken about, was that, you know, the entire, you could say it for most NFL teams because of a quarterback, but Matt Stafford, more than a lot of quarterbacks in this league, if Matt Stafford is not playing well, they will fail. You know, like if he has usually more than 1 interception, they will fail. And that's kind of just, you know, baseline for most people, but it is bigger for Matthew Stafford, I think, than it is for other quarterbacks.
Yeah, they don't have the Todd Gurley like they used to be able to bail able to bail Jared Goff out right now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. You know, not really much. I mean, we didn't even mention the injuries earlier, but for the Rams, there was one bigger injury. Tyler Higbee, the tight end, has an MCL sprain and left the game early. He has the possibility to play for the Super Bowl. And the same thing actually happened to Bengals tight end CJ Uzama, who also had an MCL sprain and also has the possibility to play. But we forgot to mention that for the Bengals. But yeah, that definitely, they had to adjust their game plan a little bit when Higbee left. You could kind of see the adjustments happening if you were watching closely. But yeah, the Niners, I don't know. How many catches did Debo have? We're all over the place.
I don't even know. He had a lot of touches though. If we're moving on to the Niners, I mean, Debo Samuel's incredible.
He is.
The rest of the team wasn't very good.
No.
Elijah
Ayuk was okay.
Yeah, Ayuk was fine. George Kittle has basically been invisible, it feels like, for the past 5 or 6 weeks, which is unfortunate. I mean, you're paying him. I think he's the highest paid tight end of all time, or if he's not, he's very close to it. Brandon Ayuk, he's still young, obviously. Elijah Mitchell had a rough game. Run, he's a rookie in a really big game. It's not too surprising. Jimmy G's been playing hurt. Played with I think thumb. I believe he was quoted after the game saying that he was surprised his thumb made it this far. I guess he was expecting it to fall off at some point.
He's having surgery.
Yeah, and that's to be expected. But I mean, yeah, the biggest takeaway I have from the game is Debo Samuel's incredible, and he's one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting player in the entire league, just with the way that every time he touches the ball, like, I've seen people that are hard to tackle. Like, my mind will always go to Barry Sanders and like LaShawn McCoy, who in my opinion is the closest that I've seen in my lifetime to Barry Sanders in the way that nobody can get a hand on him. But it's different than Debo, because people get hands on him. But, like, it's not even like he's constantly trucking through them like a Gronk or something. He's carrying them along. It's just like, it's like he's covered in Crisco and
They just like slide
he just
off.
goes. He
Yep.
slithers. Like, I don't get it. I truly like watching him. I don't understand
It's
why it's so hard
beautiful.
to tackle him. Like, for professional athletes, not for me.
Yeah.
I would die. But
I would love to watch you try and tackle him.
I would die. I would die.
But it is beautiful. It's, we talk a lot about, that's why I love, watching Cooper Kupp play football is beautiful. And it's the same with Debo, that just watching him do his thing is like life-changing. Like, it is beautiful to watch. I don't think there's a better word than that. Yeah. But one of my things that you mentioned, Jimmy G, one of the things that I wanted to point out was that Jimmy G on completions was only 16 completions for 30 attempts. That really hurt the offense. I think that is a huge thing for their downfall in that game.
Yeah, I mean,
and not being able to get the run game going. That's the thing, right? Like, you can't
especially
really
when
get.
you start, you were up like
really
what,
much
17-3, I think.
Yeah, I believe
that
that's
what
what
it
it was. I have it right here. Yeah, no, 10-7.
Was it 17-10 at some point?
The Niners scored 10 in the second. The Rams scored 7 in the second. No, a 17. No, then the Ram. Yes, it was 17-7. There we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In the third, at the end of the third, it was 17-7.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a pretty sizable lead going into the fourth in a game where not a lot of points have been scored. So they failed to get the run game going. But also, like, Kyle Shanahan took his foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
He failed to go for it on a pretty key fourth down.
Next Gen Stats tweeted out right away and was like, "That was the wrong decision."
What did I say last week? I said I trusted Kyle Shanahan a little bit more than I trusted McVay. Clearly, I was wrong. Maybe it didn't matter because Kyle Shanahan was in the position to actually, take his foot off the pedal where McVay really wasn't. But yeah, I mean, it's just like I'm not going to go on the rant again. Figure it out. Hire a dude to look at the analytics and make smarter choices so you don't lose games that you should win.
Tell us a little bit about, what other changes you would like to see with the Niners. Now that
the biggest thing is,
or not like to see, that you expect to see, stuff like that.
The biggest thing is obviously Jimmy G. He, and I meant to look this up earlier, but he's under contract for 1 more year. And it's under contract for like a decent amount of money. I believe it's like $27 million. I'm looking at it right now. It is, about $27 million is the cap hit. But if they cut him, it only costs them $1.4 million. So there's a massive cap savings if they cut him. I think the more realistic option is they'll probably be able to find a trade suitor because there's going to be a lot of places that don't win in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes or the Russell Wilson sweepstakes and are looking to maybe compete sooner rather than later, or, this isn't the greatest rookie quarterback draft comparatively to last year. So there's going to be
the year after.
Yeah. There's going to be teams that are missing quarterbacks like Denver, the Steelers, Carolina all come to mind. Maybe, probably not the Packers, but maybe the Seahawks. I don't know. But I think it's more likely that he gets traded. It's just going to continue the conversation of, how responsible was he for the success that he had. I'm a firm believer in QBs. QB win. Oh my God. Wins are not a quarterback stat. They're a team stat. I think Jimmy G is an average starter in Tampa Bay. Kyle makes a good point in the comments. I think Jimmy G is at least an average starter in the NFL, but he hasn't, I haven't really seen him take over and win a team a game. And I think that's what it's going to come down to, is figuring out, what team thinks that they can win with Jimmy G as opposed to because of him. But on the 49ers,
he's the only quarterback with more than one Super Bowl ring left in the NFL now that Brady and Roethlisberger retired.
And he has 2, both his
back. 2. Yep.
With the Patriots. On the 49ers side of things, Trey Lance. I mean, he was the number 3 overall pick. They traded up to get him. They invested a lot of capital in him, and by doing that, they named him the future of their franchise. We need to see what he looks like in a full, another full off season and being the full-time starter going into the season. he's very, very different than Jimmy G athletically. I mean, he's an
100%.
athletic marvel. He's probably instantly one of the best running quarterbacks in the league.
Yep.
Up there with the Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts of them all. So, it's really, really interesting to see what that does to the franchise, what it does to their key players. Does Deebo Samuel remain a hybrid running back wide receiver like he became in the latter half of the year? Where do they go in the draft? Do they go for more offensive weapons, or, do they feel happy with what they have, as maybe they probably should, with Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, and, Elijah Mitchell, a running back? Do they bring back Raheem Mostert? What changes happen to the coaching staff, if any?
And this team is young. This team is very young. I mean, like, even George Kittle is at only 28. For a tight end, that's still fairly young. For a running back, that'd be old. But the Elijah Mitchell, Ayuk, and Debo, and
all in their rookie
Sermon,
contracts.
they're all so young.
Let's not throw Sermon in that conversation.
Yeah.
But still, let's not. That's giving him too much credit.
Okay, I'm just saying age. Like, this team is. Very
I'm only 25 too. We're not putting me in that conversation. And I was about as useful to the Niners as Trey Sermon.
I forgot he was 25. I thought he was like 24. But even
I have no clue how old he is.
Oh, okay. So anyway, my point is that there's going to be a lot of changes for the Niners this year, and I think for me, it's just getting to see what an offense looks like. They used Trey Lance packages throughout the year, and those packages were very explosive and exciting. But I'm curious to see how they create a 60-minute game plan around Trey Lance, and I think that will be once we see that first, preseason, or whatever they want to play in preseason, or first regular season game, that we'll have a better idea of the future of the Niners, and even just scheme wise, and have some sort of idea. But for right now, I think it's going to be a lot of evaluation on how to cater to Trey Lance, because they have, like you said, Jimmy G is very, very different than him.
I mean, I think the bright side is, while the offense might look significantly different, I don't think a lot of the players will.
No.
I don't think there's going to be many major changes offensively. I mean, maybe on the line, but outside of that, like, I think all the major players are going to come back. They're not really in danger of losing any of them. Maybe they add some talent through the draft, but outside of that, it's really just going to be plugging in Trey Lance and making the offense work for him and getting him acclimated, less so than it is everyone else, which is probably a good thing for both the offense, for Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance. But, I guess we'll find out pretty soon how responsible Jimmy G was for their success and what the ceiling of the number 3 overall pick really is.
Yeah, and now our Super Bowl is set for not this Sunday. We have a week off.
Pro Bowl, baby.
Pro Bowl. But then we have the Super Bowl between the Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams, and the following Sunday, I believe that's the 13th. It should be a lot of fun. Next week we will be here. We will be talking about the Super Bowl in its entirety. We'll be talking about some of our, favorite betting, where we're going to go with our money to bet, and pick some Gatorade colors and stuff like that. But Duncan, one last thing, we talked about Brian Flores earlier. I can speak for myself, and I from what I speak with you, we stand with Brian Flores, and we 100% agree that change needs to happen in this league sooner rather than later. And that's just, that should be the bar is on the floor just by saying, there needs to be change. So, we stand with him. And Duncan, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at mpduncan75. You can find me on this podcast Wednesday nights at 8:00 Eastern Standard Time. And you can find me as the producer of the Undrafted Pod, hosted by Jax Falcone at Dino Game Theory. And you can find me in general with the Undroppables at the Undroppables on Twitter and theundroppables.com. What about you?
You can find me with you here Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. You can find me on Twitter at Ashley_Marie. You can find me at all of the Undroppables social media handles. You can find me and talk to me directly too on Twitter, but also with the Undroppables Patreon, where you'll have access to our exclusive premium Discord channels where you'll be able to talk one-on-one with our entire team and with other patrons. That's at patreon.com/theundroppables. It's a small little fee to pay, but you got a lot of advice on fantasy, on general football, and stuff like that. Yeah, and also happy National Women and Girls in Sports Day.
Thank
Forgot
you.
to mention that. Thank you. But yeah, so also while we stand with ending racism in football, we also stand with women in sports. They have a place here. So yeah, that's about it. You can find my content also at the Undroppables website, theundroppables.com. And we look forward to talking some Super Bowl with you next week. Thanks for stopping by.
Happy Women in Sports and Football Day to you, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right. See everyone next week.
Bye.